After several streaming releases, the Predator franchise is back on the big screen with a new film titled Predator Badlands. This comes after the recent resurrection of the franchise, similarly to what's happening over with the Alien series. And naturally, with a franchise this big, the quality of content has varied over the years. So today's video, we're going to be looking at all 9 films and ranking them from worst to best. To be honest, this is one of the harder rankings I've done in a while, so if my list doesn't really line up with yours, just keep in mind that some of these choices could have easily fallen in one place above or below. Hopefully I don't annoy you too much, but let's get into it. One which wasn't a hard choice was having The Predator in at last place. I just have never liked this film. I've only watched it twice, but both times I just found the viewing experience quite miserable. On paper, the film seems to be in good hands, with original cast member Shane Black returning to direct, so naturally you'd think, okay, this person would want to do this film justice within such an iconic franchise, but that did not happen. Any sort of seriousness is abandoned and instead replaced with overly poor comedy, and the kind which particularly focuses on the cruder aspects. None of it works at all, and the consistent attempts at attempting it only make it worse and just overall exhausting. But this film has plenty of baffling choices, the most infamous being how they handle autism and disabilities in general. Just what they do there is quite disrespectful and laughable at their attempts in some areas. Past that, the action was dull, the characters were very unlikable, and the CGI just felt unfinished. So when you mix all of these aspects together, you have yourself a disaster. I think Requiem is the film that most people have in last place, and I'm not going to be the first to say this, but this film just takes a dark approach, and I mean that narratively and visually. By going for that dark approach, they remove all of the lighting, so it's very hard to see what is going on. Through that, you become disorientated with the whereabouts of characters, what actually is happening, and also the action is just, well, non-existent because you can't see anything that's going on. The scenes that are in daylight mainly focus on the characters and spends way too long with them and showcases how hollow and, again, unlikable they are. So when you show up to a film and the one thing you're there wanting to see is completely covered in darkness, and you're instead treated to some teen drama which is just very surface level and poor, then obviously this film isn't going to be very high up on the list, as even its attempts at providing that Alien vs Predator experience, it just goes way too heavy on the darkness narratively this time, and just makes it quite distasteful with some of the choices that it makes. This film could have easily rehashed the first one, with it taking place in the jungle, and the decision to go to New York was quite baffling. And while there were some benefits, I thought the decision to take it to the city also provided some issues. You do always remember this one as the one which took place in New York. However, that is also where the problems lie, because the original thrived on such an intimate setting, and when you take that and dump it into a massive city, that claustrophobic feeling is almost removed, as you can easily escape the situation. Furthermore, now that we know about the true identity of the Predator, a menacing presence is no longer here to the same extent. So while there is some strong action and good moments, it was just hard to become invested in the story and feel the tension that was so strong in the first film. I've always said it on this channel, but this film is my guilty pleasure. I can acknowledge all the poor things with it, with the excessive plot holes in areas, the poor dialogue, and just the overall cheesiness, which hasn't aged the best. But the big thing I take away from this is what it delivers, and that is exactly what the title says. Yes, there could be better attempts done, and maybe we'll get that in the future with both franchises thriving these days, but this film doesn't spend most of its runtime setting up this battle. It kind of just rushes to it and then treats you to a lot of action, which I appreciated. Characters are more sidelined this time around rather than having to feel forced into the plot. So yes, all of these shortcuts do come across as quite cheap, but it does generate a charm to it, especially once you're getting what you want from this film. So yes, it was never going to be one of the top films in this list, but to be honest, I quite enjoyed it, and as I said, it's a bit of a guilty pleasure for me.
He claimed me as a music buddy and a lot of
Predators is very frustrating in the end because on one hand, this film does take a lot of inspiration from the original by taking it into a similar setting and deploying the narrative in familiar fashion. However, it does change up a lot of things and catches you off guard with its twists, but those smart choices are undone by some really poor ones. The general premise of this film follows some horrendous people being chucked into this environment, and obviously they don't know what's going on, but with all of these terrible people in this environment, it's going to be hard to latch onto them, especially when they start to detail why each individual character is a terrible person. From that, we are treated to some fun action, even if it is over the top in areas, and attempts at trying to redeem certain characters, which just doesn't work, whether because you know what they've done is irredeemable or not enough is done to justify us wanting to care about them. This film does swing for the fence with some of its choices. Some do work, some don't, but this main issue is what plagues me from becoming properly invested in the film, as you need someone to root for. This is where this ranking became quite hard for me, but I settled on having Killers of Killers in 4th place. This is probably the most unique film of the entire franchise. It is obviously the only animated feature on here, but the way it's constructed is extremely different to the rest. We follow 3 anthology short films which then combined and intertwined their stories into a big climax, and then I thought the individual stories each presented some strengths, which I really enjoyed and thought was really cool and fascinating, and a smart choice to take this franchise in that direction. However, once you combine all of those stories and intertwine them into something larger, that's when the film began to lose me, and I still had fun with the ending, but some of the issues became clear, and as is the nature of presenting short films, you're not dedicated as much time to flesh out characters or storylines. I thought the storylines were solid for what the film was going for, but I couldn't find myself becoming super invested in the characters, which is seemingly a theme within this franchise. The animation was very unorthodox. I found it quite odd at the start, but as I adjusted to it, I thought it really merged well with the action and style of the film, and from that we got some of the goriest and coolest action sequences in the entire franchise. So I thought individually these stories were really cool, but when you start to intertwine them together, that's when Killers of Killers started to lose me, so that's why I've put it in at 4th place. With the new addition making the top 3, Predator Badlands explores an uncharted territory for this franchise, both literally by showing us planets and areas that we haven't seen before, but also by changing the perspective and showing the story through a Yautja's eyes, and it was a very interesting choice, and ultimately I think it paid off. Despite limited dialogue, I thought Tech's journey was very interesting, and the arc he goes on was extremely satisfying by the end. He is helped out by Elle Fanning's character Thea. He does a lot of heavy lifting in terms of explaining certain things, progressing the narrative, and also a bit of comedic charm as well. The latter did get overplayed a little bit too much, not to the point where it ruined my experience, but it did take me out of several serious moments when that occurred. The first time in the mainline series, this film does have a PG-13 rating, which was disappointing to hear, but once you watch it, you realise that due to the lack of humans in this story, the action is pretty much the same, and if not better, because it is thoroughly entertaining in that regard. As well, it looks super stunning, and I think the large-scale world depicted is done justice through that cinematography. So yeah, I thought Badlands was pretty cool and very strong in many areas. I am nitpicking with the occasional disruption of comedic timing, but that is what pushes this slightly lower down than the other 2 in this list. The moment I was dreading was having to explain why Predator isn't in top spot and is instead in 2nd place for me. Look, if you've been a subscriber for a little while, you'll know that the last time I did this ranking, I had this film in 1st place. By having Badlands below it, surely it should still be in 1st place, but no, opinions change over time, and I now have the job of trying to justify that change. I'll get the negatives out of the way straight away so I can go ahead and praise this film, because it is a very cool cool film and one which I do enjoy. I think the areas of weakness are from just not aging the finest. There are moments which I do get, like special effects. They do have a charm to them, but other things like editing and the script I feel like is justifiably criticized here, as the script was quite poor in areas. I found the editing to be a bit disorganized in areas. So again, I am very much nitpicking, but if you're paying attention to these ratings, they're all so close to each other that I have to justify why this one isn't in the top spot, because the premise is simple yet very effective. I think delaying the full reveal of the Predator till the end was the smart decision, as throughout you just got this slow burn of tension that slowly builds and builds and builds. And fittingly, with the Predator's invisibility technology, it does feel like you are being watched the entire time. So I think this film was very strong in crafting its tension, and when we got the action, it was so fun as well. There is a slight campiness, yet it doesn't really diminish the overall product, because there is a nice blend of action and horror. It all comes together really nicely, but as I said, if I am nitpicking, those few issues are the reasons why this isn't in top spot. Also, it's not in top spot because Prey is just extremely cool as a film, and my love for it has only grown over time. This was a time where the franchise was pretty much at an all-time low. We went off the back of my least favorite film in the franchise. There'd been a long hiatus, and then this film gets dumped on a streaming service and doesn't even contain Predator in the title. But yet this is what marked the franchise's revival, as it was stripped back to the basics, and from that is where it thrived. The campy elements and over-the-top sci-fi aspects were removed, and this film goes back in time to a simpler time where technology is not so advanced for us, and the same goes for the Predators. Through that we see some very, very cool fight sequences which use the environment to their advantage, and what makes these even cooler is our investment in the characters, in particular our lead Naru, and also just following the Predator's point of view was quite cool as well. I was invested in the entire film from start to finish, whether that was the extremely fun action, the clever uses of environment and time, just the overall execution of the story and horror that the Predator presents. Sorry that this video is slightly late. I really had to take my time and make sure I got this ranking right, and I took a few days to think that over. You know, it's not easy to dethrone the original in an iconic franchise, yet I have done it today, and not through the new release, but one from a few years ago. I hope my ranking didn't upset you too much, and I hope that you can respect my choice as I'd respect yours. In fact, I'd love to see your ranking down below in the comments. While you're there, if you could like and subscribe, that would also mean a lot. I'm also starting to post shorter film reviews over on TikTok, so if you are interested in that, I have left the link in my description. Thank you so much for watching today's video, and I hope to see you in my next ranking.